Welcome back, Focus Learners, to another edition of The Explainer. Now, if you've been following along with our series, you already know the basics of HTML, right? You've got your tags, your links, images, and lists down. But today we are going to transform your code from a chaotic, messy jumble into a professional, highly accessible web structure. We're tackling Semantic HTML, which is really the invisible architecture that powers the modern web. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this because, honestly, once you grasp this concept, the way you build websites will change forever. It's a total game changer.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is the roadmap for today's lesson so you know exactly what to expect. We'll be covering the power of Semantic HTML, the core tags you need to know, how to build a complete layout structure, the massive benefits for accessibility and SEO, common beginner mistakes to avoid, and we'll wrap up with a practice challenge and a quick recap. Section 1. The power of Semantic HTML, from chaos to clarity.
Imagine entering a library where every book is placed in a random pile with no labels. Finding anything would be difficult. That's exactly what happens when a web page is built using only generic div tags. Semantic HTML helps us organize web pages with meaningful tags, so browsers, search engines, and developers can understand the content more easily. At its core, the word semantic literally relates to meaning. So you're not just writing code that looks good, you're writing code that actually explains its own purpose.
Let's look at a typical non-semantic tag in your code, just a standard div with a class of header. Now, visually, a browser can read your CSS and make this look like a beautiful header for human eyes. But the div itself, it has zero built-in meaning. It's literally just a blank, invisible box. Now, compare that to semantic HTML, using the actual header tag. These tags clearly describe their role. They tell the browser, hey, look at me, I am the introductory content, making it instantly easier for systems and other developers to interpret exactly what's going on.
And this brilliantly illustrates the structural shift we're talking about. A layout built with generic div blocks might look visually identical to a sighted user as one built with proper semantic tags, but under the hood, replacing those meaningless blocks with specific semantic tags creates a vastly superior document. It's exactly like the difference between labeling a moving box with the word stuff versus labeling it kitchen utensils. One is basically useless, and the other tells you exactly what's inside.
Section 2. Core Semantic HTML Tags, the tools of clarity. Let's meet the heroes replacing our generic divs.
First up, we have the header and nav tags. The header tag's whole purpose is to represent introductory content. Think of a real-world travel website, the part at the very top containing the main title and logo. In your code, you just wrap that in a header tag. Now visually, the browser displays it exactly like a standard unstyled block. But its real power is semantic. It definitively tells systems where the introduction is, which easily beats a generic div. Next is the nav tag, used for major navigation links. In your code, you wrap your main menu in nav. Again, visually, it just looks like a plain box until you style it, but structurally, using the nav tag clearly signals to the browser, hey, this is the primary way to get around the site.
So, let me ask you a quick question to test your focus. Based on what we just covered, which tag would you use to group a website's main navigation menu links? Take a second to think about it. If you said the nav tag, you are absolutely right. It's intended specifically for those major navigation blocks.
Next, let's look at the main and section tags. In your HTML code, the main tag holds the central, unique content of your document. And there is a crucial rule here. There should only ever be one main tag per page. Inside of it, you use the section tag for thematic groupings. For example, a block dedicated to popular destinations on that travel site we mentioned. Visually, the browser just sees these as standard containers that do absolutely nothing special on the screen. But semantically, they tell the browser that all the elements inside are related to one specific topic, making them incredibly powerful.
Moving right along, we have the article and aside tags. The article tag represents independent, self-contained content. The golden rule to remember here is, could this content stand completely alone, like a blog post or news item, and still make sense? If yes, use the article tag. The aside tag, on the other hand, is for tangentially related content. A perfect real-world example is a sidebar containing related links or ads. Visually, an aside or article behaves just like a basic block in the browser until you add CSS. But structurally, the aside tells the browser, this is helpful extra info, but it's not the main focus. Again, this adds so much more structure than a meaningless div.
Let's do another quick check.
Should a single independent blog post be placed inside a section tag or an article tag? Think about that rule of independence we just discussed. If you chose article, fantastic. An individual blog post is self-contained, so it belongs in an article. However, you might use a section tag to group several different article tags together.
The last of our core tags is the footer. As you might guess, this tag visually anchors the bottom of a page, although without CSS, it's just another standard text block. But its semantic purpose in your code is to provide essential meta information about the containing element. This is exactly where you put the author's name, copyright notices, and contact details. Using a footer tag clearly defines this important administrative content in a way a generic div simply never could.
Section 3. Structuring a complete layout. Putting it all together. It's time to assemble these tools into a complete, harmonious web page.
So the crucial point is how these pieces fit together, perfectly illustrated by this wireframe. Imagine we're building a blog. At the very top, you use your header to establish the site identity. Just beneath it, the nav provides your primary menu. Then you open your main tag to house the core content. Inside that main, you might have a section grouping your latest articles, and within that section, individual article tags for each specific blog post. Off to the right, an aside tag holds your popular post sidebar. And finally, a footer wraps up the whole page at the bottom. It is a unified, clearly structured code base where every single block has a distinct, readable purpose.
Section 4. Accessibility and SEO benefits. The unseen impact. Let's look at the hidden reasons behind this structure.
Did you know browsers actually create two different layers for interpreting our content? The first is the DOM, or Document Object Model, which creates the visual presentation that sighted users see. The second is the AOM, or Accessibility Object Model. Screen readers and assistive technologies rely heavily on the AOM. When you use semantic elements, you provide non-visual affordances, which are essentially built-in landmarks. A screen reader can instantly announce navigation menu here, or allow a visually impaired user to use a keyboard shortcut to skip right to the main content. You simply can't do that with a plain div.
And what about search engines? Why might a search engine prefer semantic tags over generic divs? Think about how a search engine bot actually scans your code. Well, the answer is that semantic structure clearly defines what the content actually is. If a search engine sees an article tab, it knows exactly where the valuable, independent content lives, and it knows that's completely separate from the navigation or the footer. This heavily improves your site's SEO discoverability.
Section 5. Avoiding common beginner mistakes. Pitfalls to watch out for. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is realizing that the div isn't totally dead. The biggest pitfall is relying on divs for everything, yes. But if you just need to group elements together to apply a visual CSS background and there's no deeper thematic meaning, a div is absolutely still the valid, correct tool to use. Don't force a section tag where a simple visual wrapper is needed. Other common mistakes? Placing multiple main tags on a single page. Remember, there can only be one. And generally just forgetting proper logical page structure. Section 6. Practice, challenge, and recap. Your quest. Time to put this into action. Here is your hands-on practice challenge. I want you to open your code editor and create a simple blog web page. You need to include a header, a navigation menu, a main content area, at least one independent article, a sidebar using the aside tag, and a footer. The catch? You must use proper semantic HTML tags wherever possible instead of generic divs. Try it out. Build the wireframe we discussed earlier in code.
Let's quickly recap our journey from code chaos to clarity. We learned that semantic HTML provides real meaning, unlike generic divs. We mastered the 7 core tags: header, nav, main, section, article, aside, and footer. And most importantly, we learned that using these tags isn't just about writing clean code. It's about creating professional websites that provide essential landmark benefits for accessibility and massive structural advantages for SEO discoverability.